Hi there, thanks for coming on today to talk about Ben Whittaker's jab, to learn how to do his jab Ben Whittaker style. He's really flaring in his showmanship. People think sometimes that he's clowning, but he's not really clowning. As you've seen I have an overall video of his tactics. This is the jab here that concentrates on his clever uses of the jab. So I hope you learned something. Please comment, like, and subscribe. If you don't subscribe in these videos, sometimes it's just appearing into nonsense. Thank you guys. Have an awesome boxing day.
All right, let's jump straight into this. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to meticulously deconstruct a single devastating athletic movement. You know, we aren't looking at some massive, complicated playbook today. Instead, for all of you focused learners out there, we're zooming all the way in on one highly refined tool. Today, we're breaking down the anatomy of a literal weapon, Ben Whittaker's jab. We're going to slow everything down frame by frame and take a really fascinating look at the exact mechanics, the physics, and the intense mind games behind a truly world-class athletic technique. So, here's the big question. How do you dictate an entire fight using only one punch? I mean, it sounds impossible, right? Think about it. In a combat sport that's just filled with devastating hooks, crushing uppercuts, and these incredibly complex multi-punch combinations, how can a single strike control the absolute tempo of a light heavyweight bout? Well, looking at the data and the tape today, it becomes clear that Whittaker's jab isn't just your standard punch. It relies on this brilliant triad of elite speed, dynamic height leverage, and heady psychological manipulation to completely dictate the terms of engagement. It's an absolute masterclass in taking one simple tool and making it totally unanswerable. And honestly, because of this approach, he's earned a perfectly fitting nickname, the Surgeon. It hits the nail on the head for what we're analyzing today. Whittaker throws this ultra-sharp, piston-like jab that operates with absolute medical precision. But the thing that really earns him this title is his unique style. As our source points out, he masterfully blends all that flashy showmanship with incredibly surgical, amateur-honed fundamentals. He isn't out there just throwing wild punches hoping to get lucky. No, every single movement is calculated, carefully calibrated, and executed with ultimate precision. It is literally like watching a surgeon wield a scalpel right in the middle of a chaotic ring. Now, to really grasp his edge here, you have to look at the traditional amateur guard. Typically, a fighter's guard is very high, very tight, and, let's face it, highly predictable. You keep your hands up to protect your chin, right? I mean, that's just boxing 101. But Whittaker? He completely shifts away from this orthodox setup. He moves into what we're calling the unorthodox blind angle. He takes those surgical fundamentals we just talked about and completely flips them on their head. He creates this innovative, super unpredictable approach that deliberately abandons the safety of the standard guard for something much, much more dangerous. To understand how that blind angle actually works in practice, we have to look at his primary psychological manipulation, which is the flicker setup. This involves Whittaker frequently dropping his lead hand all the way down near his waist or his hip. Now just think about what this does to an opponent's brain. By keeping the hand so incredibly low, he completely hides the starting trajectory of the punch. He is literally scrambling the defender's radar. Instead of watching a glove up near their own eye level, opponents are staring at empty space, which makes it incredibly difficult for them to read his intentions or even brace for the incoming impact. Okay, so the absolutely crucial point is understanding the physical reality of what happens next. Because that hand is resting all the way down at his hip, the punch doesn't travel in a straight horizontal line from the shoulder like a traditional jab would. Instead, he whips the jab upward from that unorthodox blind angle. I want you to just imagine for a second trying to defend against that in real time. You're standing there, staring at his shoulders, looking into his eyes, trying to gauge the distance, and suddenly, without any warning at all, a strike violently whips up from a total blind spot down by his waist. It's a terrifyingly effective offensive maneuver that totally bypasses your normal defensive reflexes. Let's chronologically break this down, the complete physical execution of what's known as his piston snap. Step 1, he intentionally drops that lead hand down to the hip to entirely hide the trajectory. Step 2, he whips it upward from that blind angle we just discussed. Step 3, utilizing truly elite, world-class speed, he shoots this laser-straight jab that locks out quickly at the elbow. And finally, Step 4, he instantly snaps it back into position. It fires out and recoils exactly like a high-speed piston in an engine. This violent whipping motion, coupled with that instant retraction, minimizes any chance for the opponent to even think about throwing a counter. But look, Technique is honestly only half the story here. We also have to look at the sheer geometry of this weapon. Ben Whittaker stands at 6'3". Just pause and think about that for a second. In the light heavyweight division, that gives him a massive, towering physical framework. This structural advantage means that when he's firing off that piston snap, he is very often punching downward or straight across, while his opponents are forced to awkwardly punch upward. It's a subtle difference, sure, but it fundamentally alters the physics of the engagement entirely in his favor. He's basically fighting downhill, while everyone else is fighting a steep uphill battle.
Which brings us to an even more important number, 75. Whittaker possesses a massive 75-inch reach. When you combine a 6'3" frame with a 75-inch wingspan, you get what the source material brilliantly describes as ultimate dynamic height leverage. He is essentially a sniper working with a significantly longer barrel than anyone else on the battlefield. This massive reach is the critical multiplier here. It takes his unorthodox flicker setup and elevates it from just a tricky maneuver into a truly devastating, long-range weapon that fundamentally breaks the standard rules of boxing distance.
And all of this leads us to a terrifying mathematical reality for his opponents, the untouchable distance. Because of his elite speed and his dynamic 75-inch leverage, Whittaker can probe, feint, and touch opponents from a distance where they physically cannot counter him. I mean, let that sink in for a moment. Imagine the absolute frustration. He dictates the tempo of the fight because he can strike you at will, but your arms are literally not long enough to strike him back. It's a masterful use of physical geometry to render himself practically untouchable, just leaving the guy across from him helplessly swinging its shadows.
Now, to keep his opponents entirely off balance and constantly guessing, he introduces one final, really unpredictable element, the art of level changing. He doesn't just headhunt. He seamlessly blends those lightning-fast head jabs with sudden, violent stabs straight down to the body. This relentless, rapid-fire shifting of targets means a defender can never just shell up and protect their chin. They constantly have to worry about their midsection being pierced by that sudden, waist-level strike. It completely splits their defensive focus, causing them to hesitate for just a fraction of a second, and honestly, that's all the time Whittaker needs to land the next blow.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought to wrap up our explainer today. When a fighter masters the fundamentals so thoroughly, do the traditional rules even apply anymore? We've seen how Whittaker leverages his towering height, his 75-inch reach, his elite speed, and intense psychological manipulation to completely rewrite the mechanics of a seemingly simple jab. He deliberately abandons the traditional guard because his sheer mastery allows him to essentially create his own rules. It truly makes you wonder what other foundational techniques, in combat sports or otherwise, could be completely reinvented by this level of absolute surgical mastery.